Call to order Town of Prescott Valley, August 6th, special town council meeting. Council, if you all would click present. Who's here? And clerk, tally.
Mayor, we have a new platform and everybody shows as a quorum present.
Thank you, ma'am. Moving on, call to the public. Clerk, how many names do we have?
Of course.
Oh, we have something else?
Yes, we do.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was going up wrong on an old agenda. Battle of the Badges blood drive presentation. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mayor, Vice Mayor, council members. My name is Jim Galloon. I'm the Senior Account Manager for Vacant Blood Donations. We do blood drives all over Prescott Valley, and we thank you for your support. On June 26th and 27th, our community came together for an annual Battle of the Badges. This year, stakes was high, the spirit was strong, and the impact was deeply personal. This successful event was held in honor of a true community hero, Sergeant Rick Lopez. We also owe a massive debt of gratitude to local communities throughout Prescott Valley and Prescott. And our first responders brought their passion, the spirit of friendly competition, while it was closely fought. The battle between the dedicated emergency agencies, Team Law Enforcement officially secured the victory and took home this traveling trophy. So congratulations to law enforcement. Okay, it was close. I'll give you the numbers right now. We had 81 total appointments scheduled, resulting in 72 completed procedures. Our projected target was 98 units. We successfully collected 92 actual blood units. So congratulations to the community. Thank you so much for all the help that you did.
Chief Dykester, if I can have you come down here. It is truly my honor and my pleasure to hand this over to you. That is the first trophy that came out, and you guys had 24 successful donations. So thank you so very much for that.
Thank you.
Great job, sir. Thank you. Next up, now it's called to the public. At this time, members of the public may comment on matters listed on the agenda or solely on matters within the jurisdiction of the town. Any persons wishing to address the council must register their name with the town clerk prior to the commencement of the meeting. At the conclusion of call to the public, the council may respond to criticism, ask staff to review a matter, comment upon, or ask that a matter be put on a future agenda. Such remarks shall be limited to 3 minutes unless additional time is granted by the mayor. Clerk will call at least 4 names right now, and if you could work your way down to the front, please.
Right. Mr. Mayor, we now have a way to display all the names on our screen. As you can see, the first name is Laura Koval, Noel Kines, Cheryl Gillum, Greg Gillum, and Joe Colosimo.
Look at us getting all fancy with technology. Come on down, Ms. Koval. Any side. Welcome.
Hi. Good afternoon. My name is Laura Cavell. I own a small business here in Prescott Valley. Every day, the town's cameras photograph my car, my clients' cars, as they travel to my door. Not because anyone is suspected of anything, the cameras photograph everyone, record time and place of ordinary travel, and make it searchable by law enforcement agencies across this country. These cameras do not record a trip, they record a schedule. In 3 years, no council agenda has named this program and asked for a public vote. It arrived in 2023 as a quote grant award, Department Emergency and Military Affairs. It expanded in 2025 as quote local border support on the consent agenda. It grew again in 2026 inside a grant titled Anti-Human Trafficking. The only agenda item that ever said license plate reader was a study session where no vote can be taken. The police department's own audit shows what this program does: 613 searches in 1 month, 43% swept 500 or more camera networks in a single query. About 1/3 involved matters minor as traffic infractions and loitering. 1 in 5 had no verifiable case number. Not one search was denied. Today's item 4C continues the pattern. The title identifies 2 opioid settlement checks. The staff reports make the entire accumulated fund balance available and raises spending authority to $40,000 for unnamed equipment, including software. In March 2025, the department told this council in writing that it would work to continue funding and license plate readers and real-time software, quote, through grant, opioid, or other funding. The town's attorney confirmed in writing that this item approves no particular purchase. The purchase can happen later administratively below the $50,000 threshold in the Town Code Section 304010. It may never be returned to you. I have 3 requests, each already provided to you in writing. First, before voting, require staff to name software vendor, intended use, and full cost on the record. Second, add this condition to your motion. None of these funds or this budget authority may be used to acquire, renew, expand, integrate, or support automated license plate readers, surveillance or camera systems, location data services, artificial intelligence systems, real-time operation software, or data aggregation platforms from any vendor without a separate council approval at a publicly noticed meeting. Third, amend section 40104 so surveillance policies require council approval just as use of force policies do. I renew my July 13th request. Place this surveillance program, regardless of vendor, on a properly noticed agenda for a recorded vote. Nothing in these requests waives my pending open meeting law complaint or my written objection to this item's notice, or concedes that any prior approval was validly noticed or can be ratified outside the process ARS Section 38431.05 requires. And this has also been assigned to an attorney as of 9 a.m. today.
Thank you, ma'am. Moving on to Cheryl Gilliam. Cheryl? Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you. The last time I spoke at a town council meeting was over Red Flex photo radar. And soon after that, nobody here today, but one of the town council members at the time accused me of saying that you were all too old or too whatever to be on the council. So just for the record, I don't think any of you are too old or too young or too white or too male or too female or too anything to be doing the jobs that you're doing. Thank you for your service. Good afternoon, Mayor and council members. I'm here this afternoon to state that I'm 100% opposed to flock cameras. Mass surveillance has no place in the United States, and I completely oppose this system in our community. Oh, I wanted to say thank you for coming as well to our Prescott Valley community. Cameras went up in our town without public notice or debate that I could find. And when I went to vote recently, I actually tried to find out where everybody stood on this, and I couldn't find that. Moving forward, I do believe that we need complete transparency. Every council member should state where they stand on inflammatory issues clearly on the record, so our community knows exactly how each representative would vote using our dollars. Tonight, you're discussing software purchases, yet there's not a single public contract or scope of work document available for residents to review. We deserve full on-the-record explanation of what this software actually does before another dollar is spent. Is this system simply reading license plates, or are we paying for advanced algorithms that log vehicle color, make, model, unique body damage, and bumper stickers? Will expand to facial recognition? Does this package include predictive pattern analysis to map out the daily routines of law-abiding citizens? We also need to address camera locations and image capture. None of them should ever be directed at private residences or businesses. Capturing anybody in the parking lots walking to and from. Never should capture the image of a minor. But enforcing those boundaries, making sure that a lens never catches a child on a sidewalk or in a bedroom window in the background, is virtually impossible with cameras on public roads, because enforcing those privacy protections is near impossible. The safest and only right choice for our privacy is to not have these cameras at all. We also need to know who has access to our movement data. Will this software integrate with external federal or out-of-state law enforcement databases, allowing outside agencies to track our residents without local knowledge or warrant? We can't hand over the privacy of our town to a proprietary software system. If you insist on moving forward, we need strict independent oversight and mandatory public available audit logs detailing every search, showing exactly who queried our local data and why. I urge this council to table any vote or discussion on this software until full contracts are published for public review and every member of this council goes on record. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Next up, Noel. Is there a Noel? Oh, moving on. Greg, welcome, sir.
Thank you, Mayor and Council and fellow Prescott Valley citizens. I too am concerned about the license plate reader cameras, whether it's Flock or another brand. Brought to my attention that there is going to be a vote on equipment and software on item 4C. Some have speculated that it is the Peregrine software. I don't know if that's accurate or not, but we should have more information as citizens living here. I don't know if it was true or not, but I read a report that you were doxxed. The mayor was doxxed earlier this year, last year, and that's wrong. The challenge with these license plate readers is that's doxed everybody that lives here. And not just doxed, but creating a schedule of when they come and go, when they're home, when their homes are vacant, when their children are home alone. We've seen a lot of abuse of these cameras nationwide. If you haven't gotten into that, start looking it up. There's a lot of it going on. The news stories are coming out nearly daily. When we had the Redflex cameras here, there was abuse by Redflex, and there was abuse by our own police department. Not all the officers, but a few officers that were accused of dismissing tickets that were for friends and family members. So again, there needs to be oversight. I don't like the idea of creating a database that's surveilling and possibly doxing all of us. So thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Next up, Joe Clausema. Welcome, sir.
Good afternoon, everyone. I just want to, first of all, say thank you to our county recorder and her staff. They did a tremendous job on this election, and I know that it was very taxing on them. They had a lot of criticism from outside people that was unwarranted, and yet they did their jobs with integrity and represented this county very well. They do such a good job that our recorder goes out to other counties in Arizona and trains their recorders on how to do it right. So this county should be very confident with who we have as our county recorder. And I also want to just say thank you to Kymberli Lopez for doing a tremendous job with the town. You are going to be missed immensely. And I think the town is going to see just how much they miss you shortly. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Jim.
Noel, last call. All right. Councilman?
Mr. Mayor, I think that there's a lot of public concern about the flock cameras, both locally and nationwide. I'm seeing it on the news. I'm seeing it on social media. I'm hearing people talking about it on the street. We're getting emails from our constituents. And I suggest we do two things. One would be a polling of our townspeople to get a feel for their opinions.
Councilman, I'm going to pause you for a moment. Just if you would like to put this matter on a
Agenda.
Councilman, there's certain rules that we need to follow.
Right.
So you either want to put it on a future agenda, you want to comment on criticism, or ask staff to review a matter.
Agenda.
One of those three. Thank you for your comments. Moving on, item 3A, resolution number 2026-2459, policy regarding use of town marks, logo, and seal. Mr. Legler, this is yours.
Mr. Mayor and Council, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to bring forward this proposed policy related to the town marks, which include the town logo and the town seal. You might remember that, of course, the town has had a seal and a logo for a long time, but the seal and logo were updated just a few years ago, and we use it quite a bit. There were some issues that were raised at the beginning of the year about use of the logo by individuals, and at the time, staff felt that we needed to do some research and bring forward a policy for you to review and consider. And so we went out and got outside counsel to help us with the trademark law, and I believe that counsel is on. Okay, I don't see her face, but is she just going to be in audio?
Brooke, can you hear
There
us,
she
Brooke?
is. Okay. Brooke,
Good afternoon, everyone.
great. Brooke, we're glad to have you. Brooke Katz is with us and from Phoenix. And so, Brooke, I'll turn this over to you to kind of go over the policy and the background and answer any questions that might be raised.
Sure. I do have my camera on. I can't see everybody, but maybe you guys can see me, or am I a black screen too?
We can see a little picture of you, ma'am.
Okay, perfect. Okay. Well, good afternoon, everybody. Mayor and council members, thank you for having me here today. I know a trademark policy might not be the most exciting topic on tonight's agenda, but the fact of the matter is your town seals and your town logos are actually very valuable assets. They're not merely graphics. They're the face of Prescott Valley. They're one of the first things that residents, local businesses, and visitors recognize as representing your town. And they're also how they recognize official town communications, services, events, and programs. So when somebody sees your logo or the seal, they should be able to trust this is really coming from the town. And that this policy is essentially attempting to serve that purpose. Just like a business, which I work with frequently, has the right to protect its brand, the town has a right, and I guess as a trademark attorney, I would argue a responsibility to protect the identity of the town itself. So trademark law recognizes that official logos and marks serve as source identifiers. And so in other words, when residents see the town's logos or seal, they should be able to trust that it represents an official town communication. In my opinion, too, I will just say that we also live in a time where misinformation and unofficial information, unfortunately, can spread rather quickly. So this makes it even more important than ever for the town to have clear, consistent branding, especially with its official communications. So this will help ensure the goal of this policy is that residents can readily identify town communications while thoroughly preserving everyone's right to discuss, criticize, or comment on the town. So this policy essentially tries to create a framework for how those marks can be used. Essentially, it's really organized into 4 basic concepts. First, it explains the difference between the town seal and the town logos. So we have our town seal representing the town's official authority, and that's clearly reserved for authenticating official documents and official town actions. And then the policy distinguishes between town logos, which are their town's branding and communication tools that your residents and even visitors are going to recognize on websites, social media, vehicles, signage, and other public-facing communications. The second thing it does is it identifies uses that are very clearly permitted. So town employees can use the marks in connection with official town business. Certain organizations like the Chamber of Commerce have authorized uses, and organizations hosting town-sponsored events can request permission through a straightforward approval process that's outlined in the policy as well. This policy also, I will say, recognizes that not every use requires permission. For example, incidental uses like a newspaper reporting on the town or a photograph where the town logo simply appears in the background. The third thing it addresses, and I think this is probably one of the more important parts of the policy, is it expressly is going to protect your First Amendment rights. The policy makes clear that nothing is intended to prohibit criticism, commentary, news reporting, parody, and other constitutionally protected speech. The distinction is that while people, I would say, are free to speak about the town, they generally can't use the town's official marks in a way that would lead people to believe they are speaking for the town, or that the town has endorsed that message. And so that's kind of really where trademark law and First Amendment work together. Finally, I guess the policy identifies uses that are prohibited. The prohibitions are aimed strictly in the trademark perspective at preventing public confusion. For example, using the town's logo to suggest the town endorses a political campaign, a commercial product, or a private organization when it does not. The focus there is not on Viewpoint being expressed, it's on protecting the integrity of the town's official identity, and of course, avoiding confusion about what is and what is not a town communication. The policy was drafted with other municipalities and cities in mind as well. The town of Jerome, for example, has a pretty clear policy that this one is modeled after, as well as Pima County here in Arizona. There's also, I think I mentioned already, the approval process is laid out pretty straightforward, step by step. So if third parties want to use the town logos, there's a clear process for that. I'm more than happy to dive into specifics or address any questions. I was told that council received a policy or a draft of the policy ahead of time. So if there's anything else or questions, I'm more than happy to take any of them.
Council, we have any questions for Ms. Katz?
I just wanted to thank staff for getting you engaged in this process. I think that it is important that the town maintain their identity, and it looked great to me.
Anything else? And council, as we have some new technology for making a motion, you'll have to, if you would like to make a motion, you have to press the motion button first.
Mayor, I'll make a motion to authorize the signature of resolution number 2026-2459, adopting administrative policy number 1-12, use of town marks as part of the Prescott Valley Policy and Procedures Manual.
I'll second.
Mayor, that passes unanimously.
Thank you, ma'am. Moving on, item 3B, ordinance number 2026-981, town code restriction reference pedestrian presence in town medians. Mr. Legler.
Mr. Mayor and Council, one of the things that we do from time to time is to watch our code to see if it needs to be updated. In the past, there has been a lot of discussion about how folks use public right-of-way. And about 2015, there was some case law in the U.S. Supreme Court and also locally where there were some limitations put on the ability of communities to address aggressive solicitation, especially in downtown areas. And so communities kind of got together and said, okay, they went to the legislature first and changed the legislation that gave the authority. And then a lot of cities looked at it and said, one of the biggest things we're worried about is people that approach vehicles. That is really something that worries us. And so they started adopting some prohibitions against people being able to go up to a vehicle that was either moving or not moving. And we've watched that. We've worried about that. And not too long ago, about 2 years ago, we looked and saw what the city of Glendale was doing. We thought that what they had done was very good. And so we adopted that. And we felt good about that. However, there's been some additional litigation, there's some additional discussion out there among attorneys, among municipalities, and the sense has been that perhaps that was a little bit too enforcement-oriented. So what we did was we looked again and we saw that the city of Tucson had worked something that we thought was very helpful, where they looked at the specific issue of medians and what you can and can't do in a median, because that's really where the danger is. When somebody's out in the middle of two roads in a median and might be trying to approach a vehicle, and instead of using that median to cross safely, they're staying there. And maybe they're going back and forth in the median. And so we looked at what they were doing. We thought that what they were doing was very good. And so we're proposing to amend our code to correspond with what the city of Tucson has proposed. And that's what's in front of you today.
Thank you, sir. Any questions for Mr. Legler?
Mr. Mayor, I just have one quick
Vice Mayor.
question. Ivan, would this also apply to, for instance, I think we all are aware, on Florentine, if someone's on the median and then someone's on the sidewalk, how would that apply? If someone's on the sidewalk at the intersection, would this also apply there, or do we need to adjust the code to take in?
That's a good question. The focus is going to be the median and not the sidewalk.
But what if, because, if the sidewalk and they're still approaching a vehicle either.
They are indeed, and that's one of the challenges. Again, they can approach vehicles. The efforts have been made to find a balance, and that's why the focus here is on the median as opposed to the sidewalk. We'll continue to see what other communities are doing and try to see how we can look at particular circumstances. But this amendment will focus on the median.
Thank you.
Any other questions for staff? Seeing none, already have a motion. Can I have a second?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to
Oh, I'm sorry, motion, please.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to read ordinance number 2026-981, adopting regulations related to pedestrians loitering in traffic medians by title only on 2 separate occasions, then place the same on final passage by electronic vote.
Clerk?
Mayor, that passes unanimously. Ordinance number 2026-981. An ordinance of the mayor and common council of the town of Prescott Valley, a municipal corporation of Arizona, amending Chapter 11 Traffic to prohibit occupation of certain traffic medians for any purpose other than the lawful crossing of a street, and Chapter 10 Offenses to make conforming changes, providing that all other chapters, articles, and sections of the town code not herein amended shall remain in full force and effect, and providing that this ordinance shall be effective 30 days after its passage and approval according to law. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Moving on, item 3C, opioid settlement fund checks in the amount of $15,290.03 and $3,403.36 from Yavapai County Community Health Services. Chief, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor. Good afternoon, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Council. Bob Tyser, Chief of Police. Tonight, you have before you a total of $18,693.39 that we received from opioid settlement dollars. Before you is your decision to accept those dollars into the town so that we could utilize those funds for education, equipment, and/or software for the enforcement of narcotics violations here in our community. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, could I make a comment to you?
Sure.
I just wanted to emphasize that in this circumstance, these dollars are basically already budgeted. And so technically, this didn't need to be brought to you by the police department. The reason why they've done this since 2024 is that in the past, the county has occasionally asked that these funds be used for other purposes, for a joint county purpose, for example, funding NARDA. And so that's always a possibility. That's kind of an open request from the county. And so what the folks in the PD have been doing is occasionally, well, each time they've gotten these checks, they've come to you and said, is it okay if we go ahead and use these internally rather than returning them back to the county? And that's essentially what this is about. That's why it isn't a detailed discussion about what it's going to be used for, because it's already budgeted for specific uses in the budget.
Thank you, sir. Any questions for Chief? Councilman Ford.
Mr. Tyser, I just wanted to inquire, because there has been a lot of public concern. Is any of this money going towards flock?
Mr. Mayor, Councilor Freund, Mr. Davidson and I have had detailed conversations about this, and of this $18,000 and change, there is no desire to move this into technology and license plate readers. So the answer is no.
Thank you.
Councilwoman.
Well, and I'll let Gilbert speak on this. I was asking him if we're going to have a discussion on flock so that we can engage the community and have a better understanding ourselves.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, we are planning and had been planning to do an update on the LPRs at the October study session. So that is in the works, and the chief and his team will be doing a full presentation on the overall LPR program and how it works, results, and those types of things. Chief, is there anything else to add on?
No, sir. Mr. Davidson clarified that we've had that planned for months now to bring that for you for discussions and update on the license plate readers system here in Prescott Valley.
Thank you, sir. Anything else for Chief? Seeing none, I have a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve applying recently allocated opioid settlement funds in the amount of $18,693.39 for Prescott Valley Police Department education and purchase of necessary equipment and software for enforcement related to the opioid epidemic, and to authorize the Finance Department to adjust budget authority within the designated accounts for appropriation of these settlement funds by electronic vote.
Clerk, we have a second. Please call the vote.
Mayor, that passes unanimously.
Thank you, ma'am. Moving on to item 3D, ordinance number 2026-980, ICC and related code updates and Town Code Chapter 7 amendments. Mr. Lewis. Welcome, sir.
Thank
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Council, town staff, and community members. Stacy Bristow, Development Services Director. I just want to introduce this to you. This has been a robust process for the last 9 months. These codes come before you every 6 years. They're updated every 3, but in best practices, counties, cities, and towns updated every 6 years. So you won't see us back for about 6 years on this item. And there was a robust process for over 9 months for all the jurisdictions within Yavapai County and also outside the county. Russ, our senior plans examiner, as well as Woody, were intimately involved with all the other jurisdictions to make sure there was regional alignment. So for example, the interest was that if you go to one jurisdiction, the snow load is X, and then you go to another jurisdiction and it's Y. The idea was that they were all on the X at the same time. So we wanted to make sure that regional alignment happened. And it did. We are in alignment with all the other jurisdictions. We're the last ones to adopt this. We also did 2 very proactive community outreach efforts. We went to YCCA and BBOA with full presentations on this, had robust, long conversations. None of those conversations resulted in anything significant or concerns regarding these code updates, but they were good conversations. And so we're here before you today. Woody is our more technical expert, so he's going to share with you what some of those code adoptions look like. If there's any other questions that we can't answer this evening, we'll make sure that we get back to by next week for sure, but Woody will present those to you this evening. So thank you very much. And our building official, at least for a few more weeks, Woody.
Thank you, ma'am. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor, Council. I am the town attorney, town manager, and town clerk. We are adopting the codes, the 2024 codes, and the 2023 National Electric Code, and the 2012 Energy Conservation Code. That is the same as the county's adopting. Prescott has adopted the 2018, but we felt we would go with the county since the county surrounds us. And that's where we're adopting all those codes. And then we have the 2024 IRC update. The Housing Authority in Phoenix did a study, and basically on the 2018 and the 2021 code, they found little change impact would be on the adoption of the codes. And from the 2021 to the 2024, the change will be on the insulation requirements. It went up. And then we have some new definitions. A live-work unit would be a structure that you can live in and work in it, and that would have to be approved by zoning. But that's a new idea for downtown area. And then we're going to have elevated PV photovoltaic structures. So they don't have to be so high. You can go 7'6" with a structure for headroom. And then the shipping containers, they are now in the building code under 3114. Smoke alarms are about the same except for one change. On ceiling heights, if there's a 24-inch difference in ceiling heights, you have to add a smoke detector in the upper part and the lower part. Vapor barriers, vapor retarder. If the soils engineer requires a vapor retarder, then it has to be installed. But the engineer would have to say that. Surge protectors are now required because of all the electronic equipment in the people's homes. In case of a surge, it would save your equipment. The electrical changes, GFCIs have been increased for protection of people, and it's mostly garages at or below grade, accessory buildings, and boathouses. I don't know of any boathouses around here, but an exception, there's no GFCI needed for lighting outlets, except those in NFPA 70. That's the National Electric Code, which we adopt. And there's no GFCI needed for readily accessible receptacles on dedicated circuits for snow melting, de-icing, or heating systems protected per NFPA 70. and no GOCI required for the listed HVAC equipment exception expires September 1st of 2026. But I'm sure we won't have that. Insulation, we're going to go from R38 to R49 for the ceiling and R13 to R20 for walls. And the floor will be the same, 2-inch rigid foam. Okay. And any questions?
Council, we have any questions for Mr. Lewis?
Mayor, I just want to acknowledge that Mr. Woody Lewis has been with our town for 41 years, and Stacy alluded to it, that he'll be retiring in just a few weeks. I just wanted to say thank you, Woody, for your many, many years of service to our town.
Thank you.
Good job, Woody. I have a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to read ordinance number 2026-980 by title only on 2 separate occasions, then place for final passage, repealing prior codes and adopting the following new codes with amendments. In Chapter 7 of the Prescott Valley Town Code, Prescott Valley Administrative Code, 2024 International Building Code, IBC, 2024 International Residential Code, IRC, 2024 International Mechanical Code, IMC, 2024 International Plumbing Code, IPC, 2023 National Electric Code, NEC, 2024 International Property Maintenance Code, IPMC, 2024 International Fuel Gas Code, IFGC, 2024 International Swimming Pool and Spa Code, and 2012 International Energy Conservation Code by electronic vote.
Second.
Clerk, please call the vote.
Mayor, that passes unanimously.
Thank you, ma'am.
Ordinance number 2026-980. An ordinance of the mayor and common council of the town of Prescott Valley Municipal Corporation of Arizona amending Article 7.1, the town of Prescott Valley Administrative Code, repealing Articles 7.2, 7.3, 7.4, 7.5, 7.6, 7.7, 7.8, and 7.9 in Chapter 7 Building, which articles adopted and amended the 2018 International Building and Technical Codes and the 2011 National Electrical Code, enacting new Articles 7.2, 7.3, 7.4, 7.5, 7.6, 7.7, 7.8, 7.9, and 7.9A in Chapter 7 Building of the Town Code to adopt and amend the 2024 International Building Code, IBC, 2024 International Residential Code for 1 and 2 family dwellings, IRC, 2024 International Mechanical Code, IMC, 2024 International Plumbing Code, IPC, 2024 International Property Maintenance Code, IPMC, 2024 International Fuel Gas Code, IFGC, 2012 International Energy Conservation Code, IECC, 2024 International Swimming Pool and Spa Code, ISPSC, and the 2023 National Electrical Code, NEC, and setting forth in full the various penalty clauses adopted by reference per ARS 9-803, providing a savings clause, providing that all other article sections and subsections in Chapter 7 not herein repealed or amended shall remain in full force and effect, providing that if any provision in this ordinance is held invalid by a court of competent jurisdiction, the remaining provisions shall not be affected but shall continue in full force and effect, and providing that this ordinance shall be effective 30 days after its passage and approval according to law. Thank you.
Nicely done, ma'am. Moving on, item 4E, review selected vacant town-owned properties. Ms. Lyra, welcome.
Hello, Mayor, members of council. Today I am bringing before you a review of our vacant town-owned parcels. The purpose of this review is to help support implementation of our town's affordable housing plan, possibly generate revenue for our housing plan, our housing policy fund through surplus of properties, identify parcels suitable for future housing, economic development, or other community priorities, and ensure land needed for our current and future municipal operations is retained. How we did this review, we started with a full comprehensive list of all of our town-owned properties, and we whittled it down. So through some objective screening, where we looked at any land with buildings, we took that out. Any land less than 0.01 of an acre, Any land that was designated a park or had a well on it, we took those out. Any in a flood zone, AE, because they couldn't be built in, or public land. Then we did a visual screening, just looking for barriers, looking on our GIS map. And we were able to whittle that down to 89 properties. With the 89 properties, we then sent it to all the directors for review. And they were able to whittle it down more. We got it down to 12. Then we sat in a room and we looked at the properties further and decided that 6 parcels were able to be discussed. So here I have a picture of the 6 parcels. They are kind of small, but up on the top of Prescott Valley, you see the 2 Addis properties. Those are both commercial zoned. Then towards the middle to bottom of the screen, you'll see Spouse, which is also a commercial property. And then we have 3 residential properties. Saratoga over in Superstition Hills, and then we have 2 on Ocotillo. So speaking with economic development, I asked them to look at our commercial properties to see what could we possibly do with those properties. So on Addis, they are side-by-side properties. They are very small slivers, but they could be a mobile fleet service, specialty auto care, off-road or power sport, agricultural equipment services, pet grooming. Those are just some potential opportunities out there. On Spouse, that would be a great corner market, community cafe, maybe a childcare, a cottage food marketplace. Those are some other examples. Then looking at the residential properties, I really took a look at these to support the affordable housing plan that you guys approved earlier this year. And with 2 of the properties being side by side on Ocotillo and already being zoned as multi-family, they are good candidates for a partnership with a nonprofit such as Habitat for Humanity. They are doing a lot of starter home projects, this would be an ideal spot for that. This has not been decided. There's no contract in place. Simply just putting ideas out there for you, council. So if this is something that the council wants to explore, I'd be happy to come back later with more information and potential partnership. So with that, hope there's some more to click through. That is all I have for you guys.
Thank you, ma'am. Well done. We have questions or comments for staff?
I remember in a meeting, the property over at Addis, businesses in that area were already interested in that. Is that not the case, or is that still?
Mayor, member of council, these are Addis properties that the town owns on the east side. The one that we brought to you earlier this year are on the west side.
Great job. I think if we're able to sell the property and it can benefit the community with the affordable housing, like you said, I think we should explore all options. Otherwise, if the town is not going to be using it in the future, there's no sense in us just hanging on to it. So I think that's definitely something staff needs to explore. Mr. Davidson.
Mr. Mayor, members, I just want to make sure it's a study session, so there's not a vote, but I want to make sure you guys feel comfortable of us continuing forward. We'll have to bring this back to council in terms of final authorization. They will have to go to auction. It can't just be sold to someone. So there's a whole process that's involved with that. But rather than land that's just sitting there vacant in some of these neighborhood areas and commercial areas, it could be put to good use, and that money could be returned back into the general fund for other purposes.
Mr. Davidson, quick question in reference to that property. I think you referenced Habitat for Humanity or whatever it was you referenced. Could the town donate that to a nonprofit such as Habitat for Humanity without having to go to auction to save money?
There are some options there.
And if we could see what those options look like, that'd be great.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Next up, wastewater treatment plant master plan and expansion update. Mr. Wadsworth. Your swan song, sir.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Council. Tonight, we're going to talk to you about the wastewater treatment plant master plan and expansion. I have 2 gentlemen with me here from HDR Engineering, Chris Rodriguez and Wade Chacon. And so I'm going to start the presentation off, and I'm going to hand it over to these gentlemen, and then I'll come back at the end to wrap it up. So essentially, the wastewater treatment plant is reaching some planning thresholds and capacity thresholds where we do need to do an expansion. And as part of that, we're doing a master plan layout so that we know where to put things and we're not tripping over ourselves to put one thing in a location and then figure out we shouldn't have put it there. So that's what this whole process is about at this point in time, and to give the town a little bit of idea for planning for the future and where we need to go with this thing. So we're planning for capacity upgrades for water quality potentially, and things that need to happen to improve the plant as it currently stands. And as you're going through this master planning process, it's a little bit different than doing a design for a treatment plant, because the master plan looks at very conservative numbers and says, here's how we think this should be designed. Our plant today does not meet that same criteria, but for the planning purposes, you look at it and say, yeah, it's not meeting the criteria if we were to design this plant today. So Chris will be talking to you about that a little bit here. And essentially, as we're going through this, not only are we doing the master planning and looking at where the plant needs to go, but we've also been doing some other studies at the same time to do things like evaluate the existing capacity and what kind of improvements do we need to make right now to keep the plant moving forward and functioning properly. So I'm going to kind of do this backwards. We're going to give you some initial findings and then kind of talk about how we got there and where to go next. And as I mentioned, the plant is reaching planning and expansion thresholds. The plant was last expanded in 2005, 2006. We went from a design of 2.5 million gallons per day to 3.75 million gallons per day. And one of the things that you're going to hear a lot about is that we're talking in terms of volume of water coming into the plant. But you don't just look at the volume of water. You also have to look at the solids loading, and that's usually measured in terms of what they call BOD, which is a biochemical oxygen demand. And over the last 20 or even 30 years, but with Prescott Valley more so in the last 20 years, our solids loading coming into the plant has increased faster than the volume, the liquid volume has increased. And the reason for that is because of conservation, because of the plumbing codes that require all of these water saving devices. So the amount of water entering the plant has not increased as dramatically, but the amount of solids that come from each home is still the same. Each person is still using the bathroom the same amount. And so the BOD loading tends to, or the solid loading tends to be increasing more. Our incoming BOD is higher than it was. And so even though the plant was designed for 3.75 million gallons per day, we're currently at 2.8 million gallons per day coming into the plant. That doesn't mean we can keep on going till we get to 3.75. Our solids loading is what's causing us to reach the capacities and the need for some of the expansion at this point in time. And so as we've gone through and done this, some of the other things we've looked at is, okay, well, how do we get Prescott Valley ready for the future? You've heard a lot about we need to recycle wastewater. At some point, Arizona is going to get to where everybody is talking about the advanced wastewater treatment, and ultimately that becomes what goes back into the drinking water system, right? Now, nobody wants to think about that right now, but eventually we're going to get there. And so can we set our plant up so that we're moving in that direction? We don't have to do it all at once, but are we moving in that direction? So as we've looked at all of these things, we've come to the realization that this type of a project is going to cost a lot of money. And potentially for a full expansion to reach a projected population of 75,000 people in this area, we may need to spend up to $200 million in order to get the plant able to do all of that. We do need to do some expansion right now just to handle our existing capacity and to be able to allow the operators of the plant to do routine maintenance, and some of that will be talked about. We're getting to the point where the safety factors aren't there for us to be able to take certain equipment out of service safely or without putting our permit at risk to be able to make, some of the repairs we need to make. So there's a lot going on here tonight, and I'm sure I haven't covered everything, but as we get through this, I'll be back at the end. I just want to make sure, so this is something I've already talked about. The capacity of the plant is 3.75 million gallons per day, but the wastewater strength has increased about 50% over this last 20 to 25 years. I did talk about the master plan being potentially for growth, but it's very conservative, and we need it also for the redundancy and flexibility. So don't need to cover all that twice. But at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Chris Rodriguez, who's going to take you through the process that we went through, talk about some of the recommendations and how we might address it, and then, like I said, I'll step back in a minute. So, Chris?
Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and council members. So Neil kind of already gave you some of the background. It gets really technical. Some of it's hard to understand. Like, we've had multiple meetings with the town regularly, workshops, and it's still some technical concepts that are hard to grasp. So this chart here just illustrates what Neil kind of already described, which is your strength of your wastewater measured by that one parameter, biochemical oxygen demand, was 285 milligrams per liter way back when the plant was designed, and now you're over 411 milligrams per liter. When he refers to loadings, there's some math and conversions, but then it's pounds per day versus volume of water per day when we're talking about flows versus loadings. You've gone from 8,900 all the way up to 12,900 since the plant was originally designed. So that's one of the main reasons that you're looking at some of the capacity limitations. Neil already mentioned this, but that's almost a 50% increase in the strength of your wastewater. So this table here just gives you a better feel for what Neil kind of talked about in terms of if we were designing your wastewater treatment facility today, and what would that industry standard be? You would use a higher safety factor. So we would use a safety factor of 2. Your current treatment facility is, to put it in a different terms for capacity, you're short about 1.8 million gallons in volume of basin. I think you all ended up going out to the plant, so hopefully you have a feel for some of this. Volume and basin for the microorganisms that break down that BOD to do their job and to give the town flexibility to be able to take units offline for maintenance or variations in flows or other unexpected conditions. So this table here just illustrates your short capacity right now. So you need to do something sooner than later. Does that mean your plant is failing right now? No, it just doesn't give you the flexibility to deal with unknowns or maintenance. You're dealing with mechanical equipment, things that come up that you need to do to get that thing running smoothly and make sure you're meeting your permit ultimately, right? That's what that's about. So you're definitely not, the plant's operating fine. You're meeting permits, the town, your operating staff is doing a great job. They just don't have the flexibility right now. So the safety factor you're dealing with now is just a little over 1.1 versus you would want to give flexibility and plan for future using a 2.10 just to give you some, just to give you some flexibility there. So this graphic here just gives you a feel for the process we went through. The whole master plan development was done collaboratively with the town and in partnership with the town, with Neil leading that effort, working with the operations staff, engineering staff. We went through a process where we screened various technologies. There's a lot of options out there in terms of how do you get to the treatment goals that you all are looking at. So we first did a technology screening, evaluated several technologies, put a selection criteria together, and then we voted and ranked the different screening technology. And so we came at 3 alternatives. That's how we got into the initial alternatives development. And then as we went further, we started to evaluate, okay, well, now that we've whittled it down, we started out with, I don't know, probably 10 different technologies to evaluate. Whittled it down to 3, and then we went through an evaluation process with that, with loading criteria, weighting criteria that was important to staff, like ease of maintenance, technical complexity, things like that the town felt was important, reliability, etc. And they ranked it, and so I'll get into what was the outcome of that selection. So ultimately, your existing treatment process is what's called conventional activated sludge. The activated sludge is a term that's used to reference those microorganisms in the basin. I know this is not the most exciting stuff to talk about, but it's necessary, and that's what treats your wastewater. So the initial phasing we're talking about is continuing that same technology, conventional activated sludge. Ultimately, out of the alternatives evaluation, the technology that was selected was a membrane bioreactor, which is basically a physical filter that helps treat that wastewater a little further, gives you increased water quality that then sets you up in the future, like Neil talked about, for different reuse options. You know, whether that's you're currently using it at the golf course now or using infiltration basins. At some point, it may become your source of water supply. There's other communities in the country that are doing that right now, just because of the value of that resource, right? Some of the other technologies we evaluated that ended up making the short list was what's called mobile organic biofilm or membrane aerated biofilm reactor. And those are forms that you can basically put in your existing basins to help increase your capacity, help those microorganisms do a better job. So the phasing that we're describing now is we would continue with your current treatment because of the price tag obviously is a little bit of a shock. So we want to give the town time to plan for that, put the funds in place for what you want to do in the future. But using MBR and conventional activated sludge gives the town flexibility to do that in increments, bite off smaller chunks that are more affordable, and it gives you that flexibility to do that in the future. So I think Neil had a couple of pictures he added to the PowerPoint just to give you all a feel for this. This is your existing treatment facility, the oxidation ditch. The aerobic process in the plant is conventional activated sludge. You're basically adding air into the water. You have the microorganisms just like us. They need air to breathe. And then the food is the BOD that we talked about, right? So that's what they use to break down and treat your wastewater to an acceptable level. So we just wanted to give you a picture of that, if you all, or remind you of what you got to see last week. This is a picture of the membranes that would be put in the future. These are being used commonly in Arizona, throughout the country to get an increased water quality or better performance. So this is just a picture of the plant, aerial photograph showing how we would fit in an MBR. So if you look to the top of the screen there, the colored boxes is where you could potentially expand the plant or where the membrane bioreactor would sit. That's not land owned by the town, so that would require land acquisition, like Neil mentioned before. But there's not a lot of space out there right now, so that's part of the reason that we've located it there. We think that would be a location based on conversations with the town that you'd be able to acquire just because that land isn't really usable as it is right now. You'll see hatching through here. So with the preferred alternative in the future, you would phase out your existing treatment process and ultimately switch over to membrane bioreactors at some point in the future. We'll talk a little bit more about what that timing looks like. So this is just another slide to give you a feel for, I'm going to show you the next, where we arrived, right? We went through the alternatives evaluation, said MBR has a big price tag. So we stepped back and communicating with the town and trying to figure out, okay, well, how can we phase this in to give that additional capacity that's needed now, but also make it maybe a little bit more affordable and allow you to implement it and have the flexibility to maybe make some modifications in the future. So you'll see the oval shapes, that's representing the current conventional activated sludge, what we call oxidation ditches. That's what you have out there now. The middle rectangular basins are additional conventional activated sludge we would add to the plant. And then to the far right, that would be what symbolizes membrane bioreactors. The circles below are what are called your secondary clarifiers, which are just big settling basins. The solids that come out of the biological process go into these clarifiers. They settle out, you remove the solids, and you take the clarified water. So the green shows you what we're proposing would stay in use for the future, and then when you would phase that out, when you go to full membrane bioreactors. So the new phasing we've come up with the town, sorry about that. The new phasing we've come up with is phase one would be just adding additional conventional activated sludge, right? Like I mentioned. So a lot of this is repeat, but if you added 2 new basins that are designed more current industry standard is. The depth of your existing basins are like 10 feet. These would be 20 feet, so it gets it up to industry standard. Gives you a little more volume. Neil mentioned you're around 2.8 million gallons per day of hydraulic flow coming into the plant. That would increase your flow to about 3.6. When we design the biological process, it's based on the loadings, right? So that increases your maximum loadings to up to 4 million gallons per day. I'm going to show you a graph here in a second that shows you what does that do on a timeline, and when do you do it, and then when do you go to phase 1 and phase 2 here in a minute. And phase 2 would be you just add a third basin, and with adding a third basin, you would end up increasing your capacity from 4 MGD, 4 million gallons per day, to 4.8 million gallons per day. There's some population equivalents there. That first phase would allow you to serve a population equivalent of about 62,500 people, 63,000 people, just in round numbers. Phase 2 would get you up to greater than 75,000 people, which was our target for the planning horizon. And then ultimately, if you went to phase 3 for MBR, you would phase out your old treatment facility and you would be using MBR exclusively. So this new phasing option we have gives the town flexibility to make different changes throughout the planning horizon when that's needed. So this is another figure. It's a little complicated too, but it's just on the x-axis, you'll see the timeline. And basically what we're saying is you need to start right now planning for design. Neil will talk a little bit about that to give you that increased capacity now, give the operators the flexibility and the town the flexibility, the redundancy, and the backup units to take units offline if they have to for cleaning, maintenance, unexpected events that happen. So start now around end of the year, going into next year, you start planning for design. You increase the capacity with those 2 basins that I showed in the previous slide, and that gets you. By the time you complete that project, these typically take 3 to 4 years from design all the way into construction being completed. Around 2030, you would have increased your capacity to around 63,000. And then with the new phasing, that buys you time, another 10 years before you would have to add an additional basin to get that increased service population up to 75,000. And then at that point, you can decide whether or not you want to shift over to MBR or, these master plans are living documents, helps the town get a big picture, a roadmap, and then you adjust depending on what changes with town conditions. So another price tag for you with that change, like Neil mentioned before, when it was full MBR, we were upwards of close to $200 million. We've now identified a phase where you would be in the $100 million range. We haven't talked about this either, but there's other improvements to the treatment process that need to be made also just because of the age of the facility. And for the same reason that you would want to increase the capacity in the biological process, you're trying to give the town flexibility to manage other parts of it. So that would include improvements to the headworks. When you are all up there, that was the screening when it first comes into the plant. Some grit removal, which is taking up some of the volume of the aerobic capacity right now. Some equalization, which is basically a wide spot, gives the operators flexibility in the lift station when they get those peak loads, like you did with your recent rainstorm event. They can manage those peaks, the actual hydraulic flows. And then, of course, the conventional activated sludge, doing 2 new basins. You have existing filters that allow you to get high water quality. We would be adding additional filter in the future. And then some dewatering improvements. That's the byproduct of the treatment process is the solids. That gets dewatered, ends up going to the landfill. This phase 1 would include sludge storage to give the town flexibility to manage that solids inventory, reduce their hauling costs and how often they're having to haul. So that's part of the phase 1 planning also. I'm going to give it back over to Neil to talk about next steps.
Okay, so obviously there are a lot of questions that can come up with the master plan, and master plan's not done yet. And so, we wanted to give you this presentation to show you where we're going. It's going to take a couple more months to get the master plan finalized. And as we've been doing this, and I talked about concurrently, we had done some other studies. We had done an aeration study that we started a year or two ago as well, and some initial findings from that have provided us some options and some things to look at that can also expand the life of our existing plant right now and give us more time to look at it. And so Jacobs is doing some changes down at the plant right now where they're changing where they're adding air. They're adding air into basins that previously didn't have it. And so we're using some of the anoxic capacity because we're told we don't need as much as we've got, and we're converting it to aeration capacity, which is where the biological treatment is occurring there for the oxidation of the BOD. And so we're looking at some of those sorts of things. And part of that was, and it's listed up here, to add air to non-aerated basins, install high-efficiency blowers, install fine bubble diffusers, and update the control technology. So even doing some things like that, which is not that expensive, may still end up being $2 million, $3 million to make those changes. We do need to look at removing some of the accumulated grit that's in the basins. We don't have a grit removal system at the plant. 25 years ago, it wasn't as critical because we had lots of excess capacity. And back at that time, even though we had talked about putting grit removal system in, things are kind of the same now as they were then. The council looked at it and said, what we're talking about here is a lot of money. Is there something we could take off the list that we don't need to have right now because we can't afford this? And grit removal was one of the things that was removed, that was not put into the plant expansion in 2005. So we're now back to looking at that. At this point in time, it is more critical because we're at that point in time where we don't have a lot of excess capacity that we can just let that grit stay in the basin. It's taking up volume that we need for biological treatment. So we need to do that. We need to put in grit removal. And some of these things can be done in phases, but we've got to start looking at how can we get it done, which is the most critical, and how much of the biological process do we expand at this point in time? And so there's a lot of things still going on. We're going to need to come back to you guys in another 6 months or 9 months and talk a little bit more about this. And, we'll be talking with the town manager, and I don't know if it's going to be me. It's probably not going to be me, but anyway, so those are some of the next steps that we have to do. We have to actually start the design process and get into that. And at that point in time, some of these numbers can be refined. You're getting hopefully some conservative numbers that, the dollar amounts can come down a little bit. But there's still a lot of balls in the air. And so I think that brings me to the end of the presentation. And if you have some questions that we can answer for you, we'll be happy to do that.
Thank you, sir. I know that last week's tour was very good, at least for me, getting eyes on and be able to see exactly what you're talking about. So we appreciate you and staff on that. We have questions for Mr. Wadsworth? Councilman?
Neil, well, first of all, how does it feel to be retired and not have to work anymore?
Wait, I'm not working anymore? It hasn't changed yet. It's only been a couple days.
Well, we're gonna miss your excellent presentations. I can tell you that, and I appreciate your service. I have two basic questions. I think what I'd like to do is give you the first question after you answer that, and give you the second question. And the first one is about the BOD load. It seems to me that the easy answer would be to recycle, to bring around and reinsert water that's been treated into the front end of the plant to dilute the load. And is there some reason that can't be done? And if not, what would be the alternative that would take care of it? Are we going to have to inject pure treated drinking water into it, or what?
No, actually adding water to dilute it doesn't solve the problem, because what you would be doing is you would be diluting the concentration, but the amount of solids that's coming into the plant is still the same amount of solids. And so the biological system is only able to treat the certain amount that's coming in, whether that's if it's at 200 milligrams per liter versus 400. Right now it's coming in at 350, 400 milligrams per liter. But the amount of solids is the same. You're not reducing the solids. So that's what the basin capacity can hold, the number of microorganisms that can treat the certain amount coming in. So it doesn't matter whether it's diluted or not. The answer is that won't solve the problem. And really, so there's nothing we can do short of adding additional capacity for the tankage that we need out there to hold the microorganisms. We need more microorganisms to treat the waste coming in.
Thank you. That's a good explanation. On the second question, we just recently, as a council, took a tour of the facility, as you know, and there was discussion about the expanding and the property that we'd have to obtain property adjacent to it. Now, as an alternative to that, or if there's a problem obtaining that for some reason, or the price is unreasonable, has there been any consideration to actually having a remote or second sewage treatment site, that's closer to the areas where it's going to be needed? And that would also help with the problem of when you have the air, we could change over some of the areas that, like irrigation for landscaping along streets, for example, could be if it was moved over, it might allow us a better way to use the treated water for irrigation instead of using drinking water.
Okay, good question. So the first one related to basically constructing a new plant in another location, so the town would now have 2 wastewater plants, essentially. I mean, that's something that other municipalities have done previously. They used to do more of these satellite plants. That was kind of the trend 20 or 30 years ago. That trend has actually changed and gone back to more concentrated at one location for various reasons. Number one, you don't have to have 2 sets of personnel operating two different treatment plants. You still have the same amount or more maintenance because you've got now more equipment at 2 different places. But I guess, you could do something like that, but then you're going to probably end up with a treatment plant in the middle of town close to residential areas, because really the only place we can go is further upstream, and upstream is back into the residential and commercial parts of town. So I don't think there's an ideal place to put a treatment plant to actually do that where it would be beneficial to the community. Obviously, that's something that could be discussed in more detail in the future, but just thinking about it right now, I would say that's probably not likely to happen or be a good solution. Related to the question about being able to provide reclaimed water or treated water for irrigation, moving the plant wouldn't necessarily do that. Well, you could do that now. You still need to put in all of the infrastructure, the dual set of pipelines. You still have your potable water pipelines. You'd have to put in another set of pipelines to carry the reclaimed water to all of the locations, to all the subdivisions, down all the residential streets or commercial areas where you wanted to be able to provide that water to. You could do it more easily at places like where there are ball fields, where, they're already maybe along some of the existing reclaimed effluent lines that we have. But expanding that out into other areas, you're going to face the cost of basically installing a whole other water system that's a different water system for the reclaimed effluent. So that's something that I know other communities have done, and they've required developers to put in the dual pipes, the effluent lines, the water lines, and ultimately they put that cost on those developers, and they had some infrastructure set up to be able to serve that. You could do that in the future, but going back and retrofitting all of the rest of the town, the existing portions of town for that, would be very costly.
Thank you for your answer.
Councilwoman, did you have anything?
Yeah, if I understand correctly, phase 1 is we're going to have a final plan in October-ish for the design for phase 1.
I will let Chris Rodriguez answer that question for, what the master plan, finishing it out will look like, and then.
Sure. Yeah, thank you, Mayor, members of the council. What we would be doing is finishing up the master plan, right, which is a high level, basically developing a roadmap. It's not the actual engineering design. It's setting the stage for the criteria that the next phase would then need to go into detailed design. So if I go back to the timeline that I was showing you before real quick. So 2020, so we finished the master plan, say the end of this year, right? And then you have that additional capacity you need now. You would then start the planning process to put out a design a request for proposals, hire a designer, and then you would start the design. That would probably take at least a year plus to finish an actual detailed design. And there's lots of different ways you can deliver it from a construction standpoint, but the construction would still take another, probably a year and a half to 2 years to finish out the completion of the plan. So the end of this year is just finishing that roadmap or that blueprint with the master plan.
And if I
Identify the
understand
phases.
correctly, so we should have the upgrade completed by, could you go back to the other slide?
Sure.
Around 2030.
2030.
And then we're going to immediately jump in to start phase 2.
No, that's what this is supposed to illustrate, is that with this new phasing, you increase that capacity by around 2030, you've increased the capacity, you can serve a greater population. And with the phasing options that we've developed, you would have another 10 years basically before you have to start that next phase, right? Depending on your population growth, right?
So phase 1 is meant to serve a population of 62,500.
Plus or minus, yes.
Okay, I'm understanding. And not, you won't be able to help me with this, but I'm going to want to see, I've asked for it before, for all of the approved units that have been approved and yet not built. Just to see, are we increasing enough?
Right. Well, so the other thing that this graph represents that I didn't really get into detail, but you see the blue line, you see the middle black line and the lower line. Those are assumed growth rates, right? The middle line is where you all are up, about 2% population growth. So that's what we were trying to plan for, is that population growth. Wasn't any specific developments or anything. It's just saying, hey, your population is going to increase, therefore your flows increase, your strength of your wastewater increases. So we tried to plan it based on that population growth.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else? Mr. Davidson?
Mr. Mayor, so we intentionally, wanted to tee this up where you all were invited to go on site and tour the treatment plant to really kind of have a good feel for it, because we're going to be talking a lot over the next number of months and into the next few years of wastewater and our overall water system. So I just want to make sure everyone knows, and for the public, we're going to be talking a lot about these systems in the time ahead for us. I wanted to just take a moment, a little personal privilege. Neil has faithfully served this community and has been an unbelievable, truly public servant for 28 years for the town of Prescott Valley, and is really the person and a whole team behind him that really helped to build this system and make sure that it was serving our community. I don't think most of our residents, I know water gets talked about a lot, but I don't think most people, when they get up in the morning, are worried that nothing's going to come out of their faucet and that the sewage piece of it is not functioning correctly. Neil's team helped to make sure that happened every single day, and he did it day and night. There were many times where Neil had to deal with things late into the evening, and it's just been an amazing part of our team. So I just wanted to thank him on that. And just for the public to demonstrate how dedicated this man is, he retired already. So here he is, all dressed up, still presenting. So thank you for that. The last thing I just wanted to add, again, is to recognize this process is active planning, and we are thinking about the future and making sure that, when you look at that timeline, that we are starting today thinking about what needs to be in place in the years ahead, and not just coming to the council and to the public at the last minute with these items. So that's why we are starting this conversation. But I want to absolutely stress that, every drop of water is precious. And this town and this team take that very seriously. So that is some of the conversations that we had with you at the wastewater treatment plant. And then tonight, what was introduced is really starting to think about how do we make sure that every drop within that system, from when it's pulled from the ground, delivered to homes and businesses, and then delivered to a back-end processing plant, can be fully returned back in so we have maximum use of every drop of water. We, as you know, we've talked about this in the past with the council and the public. There's PFAS and there's other pharmaceutical chemicals that we all of us put into the water system. These are the types of things that we are talking about. How do we make sure we remove that in the future with other systems that could be added to this, so that again, we can do recharge in other locations of our community and possibly, have full drinkable use of some of this water. Right now, I think many, certainly in Arizona and Southwest, water is extremely important and we have to be thinking about that. And it's going to be a big investment. And I want to make sure we don't shy away from that this is going to cost a lot of money and we're going to have to be very smart about it. It doesn't mean that our ratepayers will shoulder the full burden. We will be looking for grants, federal dollars, any other funds that we can bring to the mix. We're not at that stage yet, but we will be looking at that full thing as we think about the long term, how to finance. Parallel to this, what we're doing here tonight, we're also going to be talking about in the next few weeks our water rates and sewer rates. And so that ties into this conversation. So just so you guys have the full picture of that. So with that, thank you very much. No.
Thank you. And I just want to say thank you to the council. You guys have been supportive the whole, all the years I've been here. Every council has been supportive of staff and you've been supportive of me and my team. And I just want to say thank you for that as well.
Thank you, sir. Tracy, I'm going to pivot a little bit. I know you're next up, but we're going to jump to 4I right now. So you're going to be next after this. Resolution 2026-2457, official canvass, Town of Prescott Valley primary election, July 21st, 2026. Ms. Fernandez.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Vice Mayor, council members. If you don't mind, I'm going to present here from the dais because I want to be able to see what I'm doing. So as required by law, we're here again to canvass the 2026 primary election results. I say it all the time, running for office is not an easy task, and I want to commend all the candidates for their perseverance and participation and for getting involved in their local government. I usually start my presentation with some statistics. It's not. Oh, there it is. Okay. So there's the primary election results comparison chart. I have not changed it from the prior years. I decided to keep 2020. As you can see, for this election in 2026, for Prescott Valley alone, we had 33,354 active registered voters. Out of those 33,000, 13,797 decided to cast a ballot. Out of those 13,000, 12,548 were early ballots. So you can see early ballots are very popular, bringing us to a 41.37% participation rate. It has dropped from prior elections, and there is no runoff election this time around, and I will explain why. Also, for the rejected ballots, there are several reasons why ballots are rejected from the report we received from the county. The most common reason for us for this election was that ballots were received late. And I know that there was a post from our county recorder saying that Arizona is not a postmark state, which means they must receive ballots by 7 p.m. on election day. So as you can see, that's a high number from prior years of rejected ballots. Oh, thank you. Okay, so how do people get elected to office? There's misconception about the 50+1 formula. That is not what we do for local elections. Per state law, we have to follow what we call the majority vote formula. This is a formula that is mandated by the state. That's not something I came up with. But basically, it requires to take the number of total votes cast divided by the number of council seats, then divided by 2, rounded up to the highest whole number, and then that's your threshold. And I will explain the math on each race that we had for this 2026 election. So you can see, for example, for that council member four-year term, total number of votes cast, 19,454. You divide that by 2 seats, then divide that by 2, rounding it up to the highest whole number. It gives you then your threshold. You can also double check me on my math if you'd like. So you can see per that threshold, you can see the candidate who received above that threshold, which means that they're elected automatically. Therefore, we have candidate Kel Plagura receiving that majority vote. For the council member four-year term, I want to spend a little bit of time going over this scenario because I know there was a lot of confusion at first. Based on the majority vote formula, the threshold was 4,864. As you can see, all 3 candidates met that minimum requirement. So why is there not a runoff? Well, based on the results, if you look, a runoff is only required when no candidate receives that majority of the votes cast. In the primary election, the number of candidates advancing into the general or runoff election would be then equal to twice the number of open seats. Because all 3 candidates receive above the majority vote formula, then at this point, we take the highest 2 vote getters to fill in those seats. And therefore, so you can see, Kendall and Michael were the highest vote getters, and therefore are elected or right. And that's why there's no runoff election required. And here are the results for that 2-year term race that we had. I also, I'm going to explain something about this scenario, but as you can see, Jason Thornton was the highest vote getter and meeting that minimum majority vote formula. Okay, so if you recall, back in 2024, HB 2080, it was a change in legislature where now a candidate who is elected right at the primary running for an appointed seat gets to be seated right away. So in this scenario, candidate Jason Thornton would take seat at the next council meeting next week on August 13, in which the oath of office would then be administered prior to the meeting. The rest of the remainder of the council-elect would then take office during the regular meeting on December 10th, which we will have to do another oath of office at that point, prior to the meeting. I know there was, wanted to clarify the recount scenario. I know there was a lot of questions about whether we needed a recount or not because the race was super close. So I wanted to take time to clarify that. So the law in 2022 reduced the margin of automatic recounts. So automatic recounts have always existed. But the bill, Senate Bill 1008, reduced that margin to require an automatic recount if the margin between 2 candidates is less than or equal to 0.5% of the votes cast for both candidates. So how do we determine the margin between those candidates? Well, you take the difference between the votes cast. And as you can see, the difference here is 64 votes. That means there's 60 votes apart from each other. Now, how do we determine the 1.5% of the votes cast for both candidates? For this, you have to take the total votes cast for both candidates, add them up, and then multiply that by 0.5%, which is the 0.005, and then rounding up to the highest whole number, because you cannot have a 0.92 of a vote. would mean 61, which would be your half of 1%. Therefore, your margin of 64 is greater than the 61, your half percent. Therefore, no recount is required. Remember, it has to be less than or equal to. So that is pretty much it. Do you have any questions?
Well, election math is different than I learned in high school, so. Well done, ma'am. Any questions for Fatima?
Mayor, I'll make a motion to authorize the signature of resolution number 2026-2457, canvassing, declaring, and adopting the results of the town of Prescott Valley, July 21st, 2026 primary election.
We have a second. Clerk, please call the vote.
Mayor, that passes unanimously.
Next up is item 4G, Type 2 Water Right Lease Agreement with VPN Development LLC. Tracy, take it away.
All right. Mayor, Vice Mayor, Council. Okay, so Vice Mayor and Council. I'm here today to present a Type 2 lease agreement with Viewpoint North Development, VPN Development LLC. This is essentially a Type 2 lease that the town owns that we have in the past leased to Arizona EcoDev, which is the developer of Jasper. And we had a delay in them requiring the right this year. So when Viewpoint North asked for the ability to lease that particular Type 2 right, we went ahead and allocated 20 acre feet of the 75 acre feet in that particular right for them to actually lease to do construction work. They will be providing their own well, pumping from that well, and using the water from that well in their development. This allows us to not use any of our actual service area right to provide water for their purposes. So I'll happily entertain any questions you have.
Any council members have any questions? Seeing none, is there a motion?
Mr. Vice Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to authorize signature of this lease of a portion of the town Type 2 water right per Town Code 2-02-040 between the town and VPN Development LLC by electronic vote.
I'll second.
Clerk, please call the vote.
Vice Mayor, that passes.
Thank you. Moving on to item 4H, requested Series 9 liquor store license for Roberts Marketplace located at 6640 North Viewpoint Drive. Marissa, take it away.
Thank you, Vice Mayor, council members. Our office received an owner transfer application for a Series 9 liquor license submitted on behalf of Roberts Marketplace located at 6640 North Viewpoint Drive. It was posted for the required 20 days and we received no written comments. Therefore, it is recommended that we forward a recommendation for approval. Thank you.
Thank you. This is a public hearing, so I will open the public hearing now. Is there anyone wishing to address this topic only?
And we have no one registered.
All right, thank you. Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Is there a motion?
Mr. Vice Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to recommend approval of the Series 9 liquor store license on behalf of Roberts Marketplace located at 6640 North Viewpoint Drive, Prescott Valley, Arizona 86315 to the Arizona Department of Liquor License and Control by electronic vote.
I'll second.
Clerk, please call the vote.
Vice Mayor, that passes.
Thank you. Our last item this evening is item 4J. We are going to be recognizing Councilmember Kymberli Lopez. I'm going to be taking it down here. You stand right there. Staff has a presentation as well, so we'll go ahead and let them make the presentation, and then I'll say a few remarks.
Well, on behalf of the whole town team, we wanted to present a memento that you can hopefully display on a wall somewhere in your home. Picture of a great, beautiful spot in our community, and people took the time to kind of give their heartfelt appreciation to you. All council members that have served, we also want to present a plaque with your recognition of the dates that you served. And then some beautiful flowers, a bouquet of flowers that you can put on a table somewhere.
So I have a few remarks, and then we'll open it up to council. So everybody can be great because anybody can serve. You don't have to be don't have to have a college degree to serve. You don't have to make your subject and verb agree to serve. You only need a heart full of grace, a soul generated by love. That was a quote by Martin Luther King Jr. We are grateful to Kymberli Lopez for stepping up to serve the town of Prescott Valley as a council member. It has been an honor to serve with you and to personally see your dedication to the residents of our town. Your advocacy is a shining example for everyone to follow. Kim, you have a heart full of grace and a soul generated by love. You will be missed, but, and I stress but, I know we will see you again. Thank you. At this time, we'll open it up to anybody on council to make a comment.
I'd like to make a comment. So Kim, it's been an honor to work with you as well. And I think your time was too short. It should have gone through to the end of the year, but this is my opinion. So thank you so much for your hard work. And there's so many things behind the scenes that you jumped right in on and met it with a fierce determination. And I just appreciate that so much. So thank you.
Kim, you know I love you. And yes, you have worked so tirelessly with everyone and been open to everyone. Your dedication is so appreciated. And we will see you soon.
I appreciated our conversations in trying to bring an ethics policy back to our town. Thank you for those good conversations.
All right, Kim.
Well, I would just like to say to council and to the community, it has been truly an honor to serve you, and you have not seen the last of me.
It's just easier to do it from here. With that, we stand adjourned. Thank you.